So let's get started here. I'm going to mute everybody, so make sure you unmute yourself if you're going to be speaking. Yep. I appreciate everybody joining. It looks like we have about 26 people, so really good turnout. My name is Josh Hand. I'm Associate Director of Development for Athletics, and it's my first year here in ERAC. So I am part of the events committee, and we thought it would be fun event to have some of our coaches, our great coaches have been here for a long time and had a lot of success at Lehigh, talk about the recruiting process. I currently coach the ice hockey team, and my background before development was coaching ice hockey. So I've been an assistant coach for a long time and had to do a ton of recruiting and found it very interesting as I went through my career, learning the recruiting process and best practices and all that kind of stuff. So we thought it'd be really fun to get some of our coaches to talk about their philosophies, talk about some of the ways that maybe if you have kids, your kids could be recruited, or some of the things they should be doing. If they're interested in Lehigh or they're interested in another school and playing collegiately, what are the things that help them stand out in the recruiting process. So just in terms of a short agenda, I'm just going to go around. We're going to introduce everybody. Then I'm going to ask them to each talk about their recruiting philosophy. Then I'm additionally going to ask them to talk about some keys to being noticed. What does a student athlete do or an amateur athlete do to be noticed, on the field or on the ice or wherever they're playing. And some hacks and tricks in terms of the recruiting, like some of the things a coach might, do. Obviously, some folks might understand the vast landscape of recruiting, but maybe just some individual ideas that each coach has and uses while they are recruiting. And then I know the coaches put together, and I appreciate them doing this because they thought of this on their own, some video for us all to watch, which I think will be real fun at the end here. If you have questions, I'm going to try to monitor the chat the best that I can. So if you want to type in your questions as you have them, we'll have a period at the end where you can ask questions, but feel free to enter them in there, and I'll try to put them in to the context as we talk here. So with that said, Dean, why don't you start? Just introduce yourself and give some information about yourself.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for jumping on. Dean Koski, men's soccer coach. This would have been my 29th season this fall. I calculated that from the time I started playing soccer in high school, I've had 44 consecutive preseasons as either a player or coach, and I don't have anything this fall, and I'm going crazy. Like, I don't know what to do with myself. As I said, I've been here quite a long time, and hopefully some more years ahead of me. I have 4 sons who are all at Lehigh. One's in grad school, and the other 3 are on the team. And Alec, who's in grad school, is the director of soccer ops, just to help out in any way he can. So certainly have been embedded into the Lehigh family and community for 3 decades, and I've loved every minute of it, and hope I got at least another decade in me.
Awesome. Thanks, Dean. Sue?
Sue Troyan. I'm actually going into my 26th season as the head basketball coach here. Been here for 32 years. So if anybody's doing the math, I started when I was 12, just so we got that straight. Came here right out of undergrad, got my MBA from Lehigh, and that's how I got involved with coaching. And I honestly never left and never thought I would be a coach when I was 21 years old and coming to grad school here, but really found my passion and my love for coaching for Lehigh and have never left. Fran and I have 3 children that are all, one is 2 are Lehigh grads. One is soon to be Lehigh grad, a senior at Lehigh. So it's been obviously an important part of our lives and our families' lives.
Awesome. Thanks for doing this. Fran.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm Fran, better known as Sue's husband. And it was a lot easier for me when I first came to Lehigh because I was the an assistant to Sue for basketball and for softball. And it was just much easier to take direction from her, both from work and from at home. But I've been here 26 years as the head coach now. Before that, for about 6 years, I was a practicing trial attorney. And I think that really did help me to get organized and to have some skills that are really helpful in the recruiting process in terms of analyzing things and looking at things. And we're looking forward to sharing with you today.
Awesome. Thanks, Fran. Sean?
Hello, everyone. Sean Leary, baseball coach, 26th year as well. I was a student here way back in the 80s. As my players now tell me, that seems like I'm coming from another, just another planet almost, that I'm not born in the 2000s, but I played here and basically stayed on as a graduate assistant and was fortunate enough to be hired at a younger age and really have never thought to leave or wanted to leave. This is just, this is home, and it's, as everybody on this call knows, pretty special place, and just excited to see where we are now. It's an easier product to sell today than it was in 1996 when I first started into this occupation. So excited to see any questions we have today and to share a little bit about our program.
Awesome. Thank you, Sean. If anybody watched the debate last night, being a moderator is a very underpaid job. So I'm going to try to do my best here to keep things moving along. Sue, why don't we start with you? I'm going to talk a little bit about recruiting philosophy and just share some of your ideas.
Yeah, our thoughts on recruiting is, for our staff, we're really committed to attracting the best and the brightest to Lehigh. That's kind of our goal. And our philosophy too is we want kids that are going to make a difference on our campus and beyond our campus. And for us, a big portion of that time is spending time developing relationships. That's probably the most important key that our staff emphasizes in the recruiting process, is the importance of developing strong relationships with our recruits, strong relationships with their families. A big part of that developing that relationship is also evaluating them in different settings. So, we spend obviously a lot of time evaluating them from a basketball standpoint, because that's where we measure ourselves competitively in terms of our competitive success. So we really want kids who can bring distinctive success to our program from a basketball standpoint. So it kind of starts with us recruiting, evaluating them in a basketball environment. But I actually think the other things are more important than basketball. Once we know kind of the standard of what we're looking for, evaluating them from an academic standpoint is also very, very important, making sure we're bringing in kids that really want what Lehigh has to offer and can excel here from an academic standpoint. And then probably the most important thing that we spend time with kids in terms of developing the relationship is making sure they're the right fit with our program in terms of the type of people they are, their core values, what they're looking for in a program, how they want to be challenged, and making sure we're the right fit with them and they're the right fit with us. So a lot of it for our staff revolves around the relationship piece and really getting to know them so we can evaluate all those areas really, really well.
Awesome. Fran?
Yeah, to echo what Sue had said, we're the same way. We're looking to bring in the best and the brightest, and we're looking to foster relationships with kids as well. And I mean, you have to have a certain level of athletic ability, or whatever sport you're coaching, certain softball ability in my case as well. But we honestly are different than high school coaches. High school coaches get who they get, and they've got to work with whoever they have. As a college coach, we have the ability to be picky, and so we really look into the intangibles. When I'm out recruiting, I'll wait till the end of the game and see who helps clean up the cups in the dugout, or if I see one of the dads carrying their daughter's bat bag out to the parking lot, we know that that's probably not a kid that we want in our program. So in the recruiting process as coaches, we're looking at times at the prospects when the prospects have no idea that we're looking at them.
Awesome. Dean?
Yeah, really what Fran and Sue said. I would add to that, when I first started recruiting at Lehigh, I really if I distilled it down, I was recruiting a human doing, what they could do for the program, and coach them that way. They were human doing. They were being good athletes. They were, trying to do well in the classroom. And that's evolved to a point now where I'm really coaching the human being and recruiting and coaching the human being, who they are as individuals, and what they're made of, and their character, and their work ethic, and their integrity. And we place great value on education, and not only at this university, but in our athletic department. So they have to be avid learners and open to learning when they drive over the mountain to practice. We don't want them to make the assumption that just because they're leaving A's Packer campus that learning stops. It actually is just a different venue for learning. And leadership is important to us. Like we place great value on not only recruiting kids who are leaders, but kids who have potential to lead. And that all begins with self-leadership. And so a lot of what we do here is trying to develop them as leaders and individuals. Our goal is to for me, I coach boys, 17 to 21-year-old boys. And so my goal is to try to help them graduate as 22-year-old men that are ready for the next chapter in their lives. And most of them are not going to go on and be professional soccer players. So, that's our greatest challenge is really, helping these young people grow and develop in ways that they can be productive later on in life in whatever community they settle in.
Sure. Thanks. Sean?
I think it's pretty well stated so far. I mean, we're going to look for the highest student athlete we can and athletic kid. And we're very fortunate here. We can kind of put that bucket aside because you can identify those things literally as quickly as doing this as long as we have. You see the athletic kids and the ones that may be academic fits, but when you really get into the recruiting side of it, that's the given. And then the Lehigh fit is just a little bit different. I probably spend more time now, and I look on the screen here, and I'm sort of fortunate. I see Chad Cusco and Mike Garzillo. Anybody knows who those two young men, I'll call you young Chad. Those are the folks that's what you hope people become someday, is these kind of individuals. And I see Kurt Weber's on the call as well. When I call him for a high school kid, he's got tremendous talent at his high school. And we literally just go down to, tell me which kids you trust. Tell me which kids react to adversity. We go through as many character topics as we can, because talent won't just survive here. You need to be able to be adaptable to a lot of different things and be challenged by a lot of different things. And so the last part of that is, I think Dean mentioned, you never know who's watching. I talk to umpires and pro scouts and other teams. I used to just want a talented kid, and now my assistants and I need at least 4, if not 5 references to validate that what we're seeing wasn't just their best day. That maybe when I wasn't there, they're a helmet thrower, or they're an arguer with umpires. And really, when you don't know who's there, Joe DiMaggio once said he ran out of ball and slid to second base, and his teammate gave him a hard time about it. And he said, I've got to hustle because I don't know who's in the stands who has never seen me play before. And so that's the mindset we use when we're recruiting kids, is there's a unique fit here, and there's a kind of a community that helps us recruit. So again, I see people teasing Garz there about outside of the new hairdo, he's still a pretty good dude. But no, that's a unique place here, and we call it a Lehigh fit, not to be elitist in any way. It's just a unique blend of what they have to accomplish here, and we have to trust a lot of good people and build a lot of good relationships to get the right people here. Because again, comfortable kids in the right environment will achieve at the highest levels.
Awesome. Sean, just sort of building off of that, you talked about a couple guys on the call right now who have played for you, Mike and Kurt, and excuse me, I forgot the other gentleman's name, but can you talk to me about what was it about them, that you saw while you were in the recruiting process with them, and what are the things that they did, right, that stood out? One of the questions here from Justin Patterson, asks, have you ever recruited from a transfer portal? What exactly is a portal and how does it work? And we can get to that, but maybe just talking a little bit about what is it that a 16-year-old kid can do to attract, Lehigh baseball?
Yeah, uniquely, Mike's the only one on this call that I recruited from the start. Chad was in the program when I started, and Kurt's just a colleague, so I can't say I recruited him. But when I went to go see Mike, naturally, I didn't mind him hitting 13 home runs and doing all the athletic things that he does. But the moment I got there, he's the kind of young man that when a pitcher was struggling, he'd call timeout, jog up to the mound, and sort of like you could see him having the ability to nurture and lead amongst his teammates. He played in a unique environment his senior year. There was kind of a lot of talent and maybe a little bit of attitude swirling around his team. And he was the calming force, and every team and coach I talked to would talk about him and his character. And so, again, when you're going through that, I can give you, 25 examples of folks like that. He's just kind of the one we can focus on today because he's sitting in front of us. But it wasn't just the athletic ability. It was actually all the other things that added up. And if you start to talk to teammates or other coaches, they're going to share stuff that they don't have anything vested. They're going to share who that person is. And again, from our side, we want young men that would be the kind of people you'd be proud of. If he got injured here at Lehigh, I think he would have the same impact on his teammates, same impact in the classroom, kind of that bigger picture that we all look for. So the reality is that takes more time. And when I was young, I just needed to get some people in and hope that it would work. Now we really vet it out to the point where we want to do our best to find, if we can find young men like the folks I mentioned here, because those are the ones that can help you win a championship like we did with Mike in 2015.
Awesome. Just moving on, Sue, pretend that I'm a potential student athlete. What are the things that I can do grassroots, with your program to get noticed? Obviously there's a ton of people that want to play basketball, right? And certainly at a place like Lehigh, what are some of the first steps that somebody like myself, if I was, in that wearing those shoes at the time, could do?
I think one is communicating with coaches. So communicating information and getting information out about yourself. If you, especially, for basketball, if you play on an AU team, you'd really want to make sure, any type of club organization you're playing with, that you have communicated that with coaching staffs, that you've communicated schedules with that. I mean, ideally you want to get yourself in front of coaches. That's going to be the best way. We don't do, we get a lot of emails. Fran and I probably get about 100 emails a day from kids. That's probably over, an 8-hour time frame, somewhere from 80 to 120 emails each day. And all those kids are reaching out saying, I'm really interested in Lehigh. So how are you going to distinguish yourself from an email? You've got to get your information out, but then you've got to make sure you're following up with best way to get yourself in front of coaches is going to be to be seen in front of coaches. So that might be through a club organization. It might be through going to camps. Most of us all have elite camps. Almost every player on my roster has been to one of our elite camps. So it's a place where we evaluate a lot of our talent is through the elite camps. We've usually seen them first and invite them, but some kids are sight unseen, and the first time we've seen them, it might be their freshman year, they come to our elite camp, but then we follow them the next 3 years. So I think it's really important to get yourself in front of coaches if you want to, have a shot at having them evaluate you.
Awesome. So I think what I hear you saying is self-promotion is important, just because there's just so many, potential Lehigh basketball players out there, right? That you have to sort of sift through it. So
I think having advocates too, not probably advocates of your parents. I don't really like to talk to parents about their kids, but having coaches, we talk to, Sean said, talk to coaches, we talk to counselors, we talk to a lot of people in the evaluation process in terms of vetting kids, but just in terms of getting that initial step is going to be having some type of advocate for you also helps a lot. And that's usually going to be might be a high school coach, might be an AU, a club coach.
Awesome. So we got a couple great questions, and I don't want to get behind on it. I want to go back to the transfer portal. I don't personally know exactly, what that is. Dean, do you have any idea? Do you recruit from a transfer portal?
The short answer would be no. I feel strongly that Lehigh needs to be a 4-year experience in order for our student athletes to get the most out of Lehigh in our program and all that we have to offer. It's not to suggest that we wouldn't consider transfer, but I try to discourage transfers because I don't believe the grass is greener elsewhere. And typically if there's somebody transferring, there's reasons it's not working out where they are. So I don't spend any time going over the transfer portal. The transfer portal is essentially now a platform that anybody in college athletics can sign on to let every coach across the country know that they have submitted permission for transfer to their own university, their own institution, and gotten permission to go on a portal. And then you have permission to contact them. So if I want to go look for a soccer player right now, I probably could find 50 to 100 soccer players. I know basketball is probably off the charts in terms of numbers of kids, but it is not a way that we want to recruit. We want to really bring kids in from their graduating high school year into our program, and so that they have a 4-year experience.
Gotcha. Great. Fran, I'm going to ask you this next question. The question comes from Susan. Coaches, can you talk about the amount of travel and effort that is required to recruit the best and brightest, and in what ways have you had to change in terms of COVID? And I know we're going to get into COVID a little bit later, and virtual recruiting and all that kind of stuff, but maybe Fran, just touch a little bit about how you've had to change.
Well, I mean, the first part is identifying the best and the brightest. As Sue said, we get a ton of emails, so we'll sift through that, sift through the video. But over the course of the years, we have all sorts of contacts at the AAU level of coaches, high school coaches, and they'll be contacting us. And, we may have people that we trust that will identify players that you need to see. But a lot of it, honestly, is just going out and going to the tournaments. I know that, that Sean, Sue, and Dean all do the same thing. So in a normal summer for me, there might be a couple of tournaments in Pennsylvania and New Jersey that I go to, but it wouldn't be unusual for me in one summer to be to California a couple of times, Colorado, Texas, Florida, and Georgia, all in one summer. So the nice thing about COVID, maybe the only nice thing about COVID, is that when I wake up, I know where I am. Sometimes when I wake up, I'm trying to figure out what city I'm in, as we're going through the recruiting process. So what COVID has really done is it forced us to figure out how to evaluate players substantially online. And so, if you would look in our basement, I've got a couple of TVs down here where I can stream my computer to my TV, and we're trying to evaluate as many student athletes as we can so that we can see things. And it has become, a lot harder to identify, the talent, but, all of us have enough strong contacts that, we can really pin them, the travel ball coaches down, and try to figure out who the best players are. And then, once you figure out who is on your list and who you want to seek out in a real aggressive way, and for all of us, September 1st was just a very important day, then we're trying to tell our story. And at the end, you guys will see how we're trying to tell our story during the COVID times.
I want to piggyback that real quickly. And,
Yep.
the one thing I want you all to think about is that for all, particularly Division I coaches, every holiday that you potentially get to enjoy with your families, we are on the road recruiting, because that's when these events are happening. And I can't remember the last time I've ever been home for any holiday for an extended period of time, because if we don't get to these events, we don't get to see kids. And recruiting is a huge part of our jobs, perhaps the most important part of our jobs, to get kids in. And so, when you're enjoying your Thanksgiving meals and you're enjoying your Christmas dinners, just think of us, on a plane in the airport somewhere to get out and go recruit kids that are going to hopefully be strong contributors to this university and beyond. And that's the downside to our livelihoods and our lifestyles, that we're on the road a great deal.
Absolutely. Sean, you want to piggyback on that? Just talk about how much effort and time you and your assistants spend on the road trying to find, the right fit for your team, and again, how COVID has sort of changed things for you.
Yeah, I'd start by saying I think everybody has a little different pocket. I think we're blessed where there's some really, really good baseball within about 2 hours of our university. So being a local person, I've really focused my attention on keeping kids home. So again, I wish every kid lived in Nazareth or in Whitehall like Chad and Mike did, where you could drive and be there back and forth in a day. Because the one unique thing about COVID is not how much time we're recruiting, it's how much less time we're in the car or we're traveling. Like I'm live streaming games probably as many hours watching baseball this summer as I've ever had. I'm just not also traveling in between. But our philosophy has been, because baseball families tend to go to every single game, it's helped us to try to keep kids local, and so that 1 hour radius out to Harrisburg or hour and a half to Scranton and Philly and into Jersey has provided probably 60% of our roster. But then you look at it and there's the Texas, Florida, California connections that want to come to the Northeast for education. And so that's where those national tournaments come into play. And you go there almost open-minded. And there's some academic showcases you go to where every kid already qualifies, which is a nice way. And you want to be smart about where you go and how you utilize your time. But the only disadvantage to those is you don't always get to know those kids or evaluate them as often as you do kids within our region. So again, everybody's got a little different kind of niche. Ours has been keep those kids that are close, keep them here, and then fill in wherever we can with talented, high academic character kids. And as for the COVID times, it throws us back to the late 90s when a lot of us started and we were just doing videotape and phone calls. You know, I rely on a high school coach 10 times more than I did back then. And now it's like, they're the ones bringing the name forward, then sending the clip. So those relationships are paying dividends now because we're not necessarily identifying as many just by happening to be somewhere. So you really got to tap into those folks. And I think we're stealing some kids right now. Honestly, I think we're stealing some kids with our effort just simply because there's a trust with the coaches we're dealing with. So again, very, very different, but really at the core, nothing has changed when you talk about what we're looking to do. It's just a different method for this short term.
Awesome. I think, and I'll just add to that, being a coach, I think that's one of the things, you know, that all of us has said is that, you know, you spend so much time on the road. People don't realize that, you know, it's you as the head coach and your assistants and you're making the decisions. And, you know, a lot of coaches, and I don't know everybody's individual thoughts, but a lot of coaches won't recruit without seeing somebody in person and shaking their hand and all that kind of stuff. And obviously COVID's changed that, right? So it's an interesting time for sure. Sue, I know you wanted to jump in and talk about out of region recruiting. So
yeah, I just was going to flip to a little bit piggyback on what Sean was talking about. Sean has a great area in this area for regional recruiting. You know, we've kind of taken the approach, honestly, it's so competitive in region with so many Division I schools within a 3-hour radius of Lehigh that we've gone out of region, and we've done a little bit, Fran does it too, pocket recruiting. We call it geographic pocket recruiting. So we've hit the Midwest hard, and part of the reason we've hit the Midwest is because the Midwest has real strong STEM areas in their high schools. So they teach a lot of the engineering pieces, they teach a lot of the science pieces, and in basketball, a lot of Division I schools will tell athletes that they cannot major in pre-med or major in engineering. So we've really taken the approach of, we've tried to find those kids that are interested in STEM, and we've said, if you want to, you can major in whatever you want to major in at Lehigh, we're going to make it work. So it's a little bit different philosophy in terms of the in-region recruiting, but it's worked pretty well from our standpoint.
Awesome. I just want to, again, stick to some of these questions. Justin had another question. I believe this was for you, Sue. You recruit more AAU players playing basketball year round, or more of a multi-sport athlete whose main sport is basketball? Do you have any philosophy in terms of playing multi-sports, being singly focused?
Yeah, so we will, probably most of our kids we recruit off AAU teams. I've always said if I have 2 equal kids of equal talent and one is multi-sport and one is just basketball, I will 100% of the time take the multi-sport kid first. Just if they're of equal talent, just because I think the upside for that multi-sport athlete, they have the opportunity to develop at a higher rate. They have the opportunity, likely that they're not going to burn out because they haven't played one sport their whole life. Injury is another area where I think multi-sport athletes are less susceptible to injuries. So a lot of reasons, but there's less and less of that, unfortunately. I think more and more kids, when they're young, are asked to specialize. And I've as a parent, and I tell anybody who asks, I tell them, if you have young kids, have them do as many sports as possible for as long as possible. You know, at some point, a high school coach or a club coach is going to ask them to specialize, but I would encourage to do multi-sports as long as they can do it. Like, it's for the betterment of them.
Awesome. Just for the group, anybody differ from that? Do you like to see multi-sport athletes? Is that the general consensus?
It's the same approach for me.
Yeah, same. You know, soccer's a little bit different because there's an acquisition of the foot to eye skill that takes time to develop. Most Americans are born with a hand-eye coordination, And so we do need kids to be technically developed. And so there's going to have to be an immersion into soccer, not full time, but 8 months out of the year, beginning at the ages of 13, 14, but I still want them to be or would like them to be multi-sport, but they're going to specialize probably a little bit earlier. It just takes time to get to that skill level.
Josh, we actually, our mindset behind it is if it's your passion to play multi-sport, don't not be the quarterback just because someone wants to play fall ball. But if you're the 4-string quarterback, play fall ball. Go ahead and be smart about what you do. And most of our kids, there's something to be said for being on the foul line with a 1-and-1 and 3 seconds to go, or calling an audible with 4th and 1 on the the 1 yard line. That competitive side is lost sometimes when you're just AAU all the time. So in baseball, AAU is like, go pitch 2 innings, get 2 at bats, change the lineup. And so sometimes it's not about a win. It's about, can I perform? So nobody walks, the pitcher throws as hard as they can. We can evaluate skill sets. We don't always get the ability to evaluate competitiveness. And so we just tell each kid whatever their passion is, they should do. Again, the 2015, I think Gars was a full-time baseball guy, and yet we had 3 all-state football kids, 1,000-point basketball school. Like, some of those guys run under the radar because they didn't just do baseball. Sure. And fortunately for us, it happened to be local enough where we saw them play baseball enough. But I would just say this, it's not a blanket one or the other. I just think the element lost is that competitive sort of like, take a ground ball off the chest to win for your Liberty High School or wherever you're going. You lose that when you're wearing a different jersey every weekend. And sure. So something that we try to ask coaches. One other thing I would say to any parent out there, if your son plays on a different AAU team every weekend, that's it. Like, or somebody does that. It just, they're either awesome and they always get invited to go somewhere, or they're just looking for someone who's going to believe that they're the player that mom and dad, So that also concerns us when we look at AAUs. Do they list 6 of them in 3 years? Because at that point, that says, I don't know what it says. It just says something we got to figure out. So,
right, no doubt. I think the idea of body of work, I know for me, and probably for all the coaches on the call, is very important, right? When you look back at somebody's body of work, no matter what team they played for, how did they do year to year? And were they consistently good or consistent up and down? I know that's something that I take a look at a lot. So thanks for that. Another question from Susan. How often have you had to pass on talented recruits due to poor high school academic performance? I'll send this one to Sue.
I'm probably not a good one, Josh, because I don't recruit too many low-end academic kids.
Okay. Does anybody want to talk to it?
Yeah. Look, it's the best thing about Lehigh is that it's an academic school that is very difficult to get into, and it eliminates for us, the vast majority of kids who are interested in our program just by looking at their academic profile. And so we don't have to waste a lot of time, no matter how talented they are. That's the other side. The flip side is the challenging thing is that it shrinks our pool dramatically. And so rather than spend time on a kid that Fran, Sue, Sean, and I already know is not going to get admitted, or it's going to be a really hard push, and it probably it's not going to be successful here, we typically pass on those kids right away and just say thanks, but no thanks. So it's not worth the pursuit.
Dean, when you're looking at student athletes, are you looking more at their GPA or their SAT, or both?
I look at their GPA and their academic rigor. I would say admissions tries to do that as well. The SATs, unfortunately, still remain an important part of the admission process, and I don't know whether that's going to change over the next 10 years. Probably will. But GPA, academic rigor, AP classes is really going to be the best predictor of success for most of the kids that come to Lehigh. A kid who has high SATs, 1,400, and is a BC student is lazy. And if they're lazy in the classroom, they're going to be lazy on the field. I'll take a kid who's 1,100 SATs, I will, and who's, a 3.9, 4.0 GPA with AP classes and really grinding it out. I'll take that kid any day of the week.
Ashley asked the question, how do you feel about AP classes in freshman year? Dean.
Go ahead, Fran, Sue, Sean.
Anybody? Yeah.
If they're ready for it, I don't think you have to push it their freshman year, to be honest with you. So I would make sure, I think their freshman year, it could be potentially a big transition year going into high school. So I don't think you you have to push AP classes as a freshman. If they're at that level and they want to be challenged that way and they feel like they can handle it, I would say yes, but I wouldn't say force it on kids if they may not be ready.
Awesome. Just moving along, we've got a lot of great questions here, so I appreciate everybody asking them. Lori's asking, the team in the Career Center has a privilege of talking to our employer partners about Lehigh athletes. How would the coaches speak to the distinct strengths of Lehigh athletes? Meaning, somebody's graduating, what makes a Lehigh athlete a great recruit, in a potential job setting? Fran, do you want to talk to that a little?
Yeah, sure. I mean, to be a student athlete at Lehigh is a really difficult thing to be able to do. I mean, they're practicing, 15 to 20 hours a week during the season. They're traveling everywhere, but they're working in a team setting, and most companies that hire, they're working in a team setting, once you get into the company as well. And so that's a natural advantage. And then the other thing is simply the time management skills that these kids have are just truly amazing. I mean, they're, going to class all day, then they're coming to workouts, maybe going to a lift, grabbing dinner, and then they're up till midnight, studying, and then they're on repeat the next day. And so, over the course of a 4-year period, if you are, first of all, if you're in Lehigh, everybody knows that you're pretty bright to begin with. But if you're a Lehigh student athlete and you've competed successfully and your team has done well, you've built the team skills, and if you've done well academically, you've showed that you have the ability to balance a lot, which I think from an employer standpoint is really good. And then the final thing is that they all have great interpersonal skills, because they have to have great interpersonal skills, because communication is such an important part of every sport.
Awesome. Another question here from Tori. It sounds like LU recruits might also be on the Ivy list. How do you help Lehigh stand out? I'm going to throw that at you, Sean. When you're recruiting against an Ivy League school or a school that's a competitor, what do you say? What do you do to make Lehigh stand out?
Yeah, I think the first thing we say is, it's almost if you're genuine with folks. I mean, if a young man's down at Princeton and Lehigh, I use this line all the time. I say, if this is the toughest choice you guys have as a family, you're living a blessed, existence. That's awesome if you're down to those two places. What we won't do is we won't compare ourselves to anybody. We want to be Lehigh, and that has to be the right fit for them. Again, any coach that goes and tells them why they play 15 less games than us every year, that's just a rule they have in their league. I don't use that as my lead. I don't go and say, why are the 5 reasons you wouldn't want to do? Oh, it's in the city. Like, none of that comes into play. We always say we want to be your first choice, and here's why it's unbelievably valuable for you to have a Lehigh degree and play for us. So is it an easy challenge? Not really. It's a pretty difficult competition. We've had some success over the years because we can just sell who we are. We've been very fortunate to do some good things, maybe on the professional level with some of our guys, meaning pro baseball and or jobs. We sell everything that Lehigh has to offer. And if I lose head to head with Dartmouth, I don't really go home and think, oh goodness, what was that kid thinking? Or what could I have done better? I often ask what made the decision so that I can figure out if there was something I didn't do as well as I could have. But it's almost like any competitor. I love that challenge. I want to win. Right. I want to win that challenge. And this place is not anybody's, again, we're not second fiddle really to anybody. I think folks head to head can make this choice because of the place that this is. So if anybody has an answer to that one of how we could win that more often, just send it in the chat box. We love.
Yeah, I think it's important, Sean, that you're in the conversation, right? You're able to compete with a school, or that school's competing with you. You're on the right track, right? Sue, I know you wanted to add something.
Yeah, one of the things we've tried to differentiate ourselves from the Ivy League. They have what we have academically. I think they have competitively very similar, with usually the schools that we're competing with have what basketball wise. And I think one of the things that's really distinctive to our athletic department is our comprehensive leadership development program that we have. And I think it's really distinctive to Lehigh athletics. And we've tried to use that to separate ourselves from some of the Ivies that we compete against, because really use it as just with students and their parents of, it's not just about developing you as an athlete and becoming the best basketball player. It's really about developing you as the best person and the best leader. and preparing you for life after Lehigh. And I don't think any program in our league does it. I don't think very many programs in the Ivy League. I've got a coach that coaches with me in the Ivy League, and she's been at Dartmouth, Princeton, and they don't do it. So I know it is distinctive to Lehigh, and I think it can be something that differentiates us. So that's one of the things we've utilized.
Awesome. In the interest of time, and this is great discussion, I appreciate everybody's comments and everybody's questions, but I wanted to try to move along to my next topic, and I want to save probably about 10 minutes, Sue, because I know you guys have some video you want to share, and then want to leave 5 minutes at the end too to have some questions or follow up with the chat. One of the things that I think that folks don't always understand when you're not in that coaching realm is the NCAA, right? And the restrictions, good and bad, that are placed on coaches in terms of recruiting, what they're able to do, what they're able not to do, dead periods, all the things that go into the rules and regulations around the NCAA. So, Dean, I just wanted to ask you, what are some challenges that you have with the NCAA, good and bad, in terms of recruiting?
I don't see the NCAA as an impediment to what we do. They provide very clear guidelines and rules and restrictions about what we can and can't do, and it's our responsibility to be educated about that, because it really makes the playing field level for us in our sport. And so right now we're in a dead period because of COVID. That's been extended to December 30th, but everybody's in a dead period. So it's not like anybody other than Division II, Division III can take advantage of recruiting. So if you look at the NCAA guidelines and restrictions and rules as an impediment, then it will be an impediment. But it is what it is. And without the NCAA, we wouldn't be able to do the things that we do. We wouldn't have the NCAA basketball tournament that brings in a ridiculous amount of revenue for all college athletics and scholarship programs and special funding. So the NCAA serves a really important purpose. The challenge for the NCAA, honestly, is the Autonomous 65 group that tends to make their own rules or push the rules and push the envelope. But we don't live in that world, and we never will live in that world. So it doesn't really affect me personally and professionally.
Can you explain to people that don't understand what a dead period is?
Dead period means that we cannot go on the road recruiting. We can't have anybody on campus to give them tours. We are really in a lockdown mode. The only recruiting we can do is virtually and through phone calls, but we can't have any contact essentially with our prospects in person.
Yeah, and I think that's an important thing to talk about, right? Because I guess the NCAA, maybe I worded that wrong. NCAA is not necessarily negative in terms of the rules, but there are rules, right? And so you're not going to be able to recruit 24/7. And so, there might be a kid that says, "Oh, why didn't coach come to my game today? I thought, and they take that as a negative, but you're not, you don't have enough visits left, or you don't have the ability to go see that person." And I don't think, I have conversations with folks that don't really understand that dynamic. So,
sure. Yeah. And it's important that families be fairly educated about the rules when we can and can't contact. But candidly, most of the clubs in all sports are pretty progressive. Their club coaches know, whether it's AAU or whether it is baseball or whether it's soccer, they know what the dead periods are and what they can and can't do, and when we can write them and when we can call them. So they're everybody's pretty educated about it. So again, I think it's just playing within the rules.
Awesome. This next one will be for Fran. Fran, I get a lot of questions from folks about educating themselves. So sort of growing off what Dean said, they'll ask me, do I need a family advisor? Do I need some kind of consultation? In terms of your sport, do you run into that at all when you're in the recruiting process? And is that a good thing, a bad thing? Do you suggest people?
Yeah, I think that for the most part, coaches don't need to be contacted by a scouting service. There are a lot of scouting services out there, where they're sending out mass emails to all the coaches across the country, and as a family, you're signing up for the scouting service and they're selling you a certain bill of goods, and you can do the exact same thing that the scouting service does, by putting together a quality video and sharing it directly with the coaches. And the coaches would rather get that information directly from the prospect, not from the prospect's parents, but directly from the prospect. So, I don't know that really makes a whole lot of sense from a financial standpoint. potentially, if you knew somebody that you really trusted to get an evaluation of your talent level, that might be helpful as well, so that you're fishing in the right pond. So for example, going back about 1,000 years ago, when I was a high school athlete, I got a little bit of interest in a couple of different sports from Division I schools. But had I gone to a Division I school, I would have been a bench player for sure. And I was lucky enough to choose a Division III school, and I just had a tremendous experience. So, making sure that you're fishing in the right pond is really a good thing. And if you just do the math on it, take softball, there's in Pennsylvania maybe 800 high school teams. They've each got 4 or 5 kids that are, looking to go to maybe play in college, and you multiply that across the country. There are only a handful of Division I softball prospects in the country. So making sure that, you're fishing in the right pond from a parental standpoint is really a good thing. Like my grandmother, told me when I was 12, she said, "Francis, even a homely guy like you can get married someday. There is a lid for every pot."
Isn't that the truth? Sean, how about you? Do you deal with agents, family advisors, scouting services at all? And
Yep.
do you find them valuable or not valuable?
We do, but the first thing I'll ask that advisor is if they're getting paid to place the kid. And that's a really difficult question for them to answer. But some of them are paid $5,000 if they land a kid in the Ivy, $3,000 if they landed a kid in the Page. When someone is paid for a service, it immediately becomes almost they're doing best by themselves for the business, as opposed to me, the greatest reference is when another high school coach picks up the phone and says, "Hey, I saw so-and-so play. He is a great player." And so we try to find that person who has the least amount of interest in helping, right? Like, somebody we can lean on. It doesn't mean those advisors can't be of help. It's just, there's enough people who've sort of muddied the water over the time in our sport that I've come to learn that has to be a question I ask very early on, is like, so tell me about your business. What do you do? What is your goal? Why are we on his list if we haven't seen the kid? And quite frankly, a lot of times when kids have those folks, it's because they've went the first tier and didn't draw the interest they were hoping to get. Not always, but sometimes they're looking for, they think it's a process to get signed, as opposed to, again, for me, don't go to 40 showcases, go to the Cage and just get better. Like, get better at your skill sets. So I would just say this, we're wary. We just ask a lot of questions when someone else is involved that's in a paid service.
Sure. I think too, for me as a coach, I always tell guys, like you said, if you just go to the Cage and get better, somebody will find you, right? Somebody will spend the time. You're not just going to be, off everybody's radar. If you're good enough to play, somebody will get a chance to see you and want to help you. So, I think that's great feedback. I appreciate that. We have about 10 minutes left. And like I said, I want to save, I know there's one question here in the chat. I want to save some time at the end for questions. But Sue, I know that you and Dean had put some video together, and I think we figured out how to share screens. So I'm going to turn it over to you if that's okay. And I know that one of the topics we sort of already touched on was, the virtual recruiting aspect, this term new normal, how are we going to recruit when we can't, go to the rinks or go to the fields, go to the basketball courts. So I know you prepared and you guys did ahead of time a little bit of video for us. So I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, we'll share. I think Sean and Dean are going to share a couple things. We'll just talk a little bit, so March 12th, we shut down. We're going to be shut down recruiting wise in terms of dead period from March 12th to January 1st. That's 10 months. And you've heard we normally in our jobs spend at least probably 50% of our jobs is recruiting. Probably of that 50% of that time, 25% is traveling. So we can do none of that right now. Prospects cannot visit here right now. So there's been some challenges with COVID for the coaching staff and, just in terms of how do we recruit? What does recruiting look like? So we've spent a lot of time over the summer just making sure we have resources available for coaches, for prospects, for prospects' families. We were going to share some of the work we did this summer. It took, one of our staff members who's in the video area, Kelly Rohr, spent probably her whole summer compiling videos for each of our programs that would take kids on virtual tours of the campus. just resources that we didn't have before. So Dean and Sean, we're going to jump in. Dean, were you going to go first maybe and show?
Yeah,
show
sure.
them?
Sure.
Yep.
So this past summer, I rented a hang glider, and I launched off a mountaintop. I had a camera on my chest, and I got a nice aerial view of Goodman campus and our field. So I'm going to take a minute to show you the success I had in doing that, if I can. And I'm just going to play a minute of it, and then I'll cut it off and let Sean jump in. But this is a really good way for us to introduce our facilities over at Goodman campus, which most of you know are really beautiful, to kids that can't be there. Can you all see that?
Yep.
Okay. That's our practice fields. It's our game field.
Is that you on guitar?
Yeah, that's me. Ten seconds. This is our Patriot League championship game.
Awesome.
So that gives you a pretty good idea of what our fields look like, our training sessions look like. The only thing they weren't able to film is the statue of me out front of Ulrich, but that's okay. We can
No,
do
they got that, Dean. They just left it out of the process.
Okay, good.
I think that it's interesting, right? Because it's forced everybody to try to, have to come up with those videos, right? And so now you have that at your disposal, which you didn't before. And even if you are able to get back on the road, you're still going to have that in your pocket. Now, is that something that you'll use in an email? How will you use that personally to recruit?
Well, for our top prospects, we're going to share that one or two forms. One is to just send that out to them, but that's less personal. It'd be ideal when we do virtual tours. Sue has really done a masterful job of creating a template for virtual tours, like a half-day tour, full-day tour, and we're going to model that. And that will be part of that tour, as if the family is here on campus and they'll have different meetings. But it's really difficult to do, to try to get up and do another hang glide thing. I was pretty scared to do that, so I think we'll limit it to that.
Well, listen, Lehigh future players appreciate your danger and your effort. So thank you for that. Sean, you want to go?
I'll do my best here. I'm a little tech challenged. I would just share that we have a Goodman video. We have a bunch of videos, and we may send that to a recruit. And sometimes, like this evening, we have 2 Zoom calls. Tomorrow, we have 2 Zoom calls with 2022s. And at some point, we may click to a share screen and just, go ahead and show the video of either Goodman or Cundy. And again, is mine showing up on your screen?
No, share screen, Sean.
Yeah.
I thought I hit it. Sorry. It's that enormous green button, right?
Yeah. For the record, Sean went to Lehigh. I went to Westchester, and I went to Westchester in the 70s when they didn't have computers.
Yeah.
So just for the record.
Hit it a couple. I don't know if I have the ability to share. It's not showing. I'm hitting it, and
Okay.
That's okay.
Well, I think the point is, right, like you guys have had to develop some tools, right, that show, one of the things I think, that we really have at Lehigh is the facilities, right? We've got an awesome space up there. And I think that, obviously the baseball field, there we go.
Ray.
There we go. Just had to wait for the mouse to run around the wheel. That's all.
Yeah, another quick 1-minute video here.
Yep.
You want to make it big, Sean? The right button?
Yep. And obviously it just goes on from there for another minute. And one of the other things we have is all of our support. Eric, our strength coach, everybody has like a 1-minute video. We also have just talking about all the support we have for our programs. So it's like quick 1-minute hits of all the things we can offer kids. And again, our sports and media staff has worked together with the coaches. And I know this group on here, basically we will never have a kid visit again without going through a Zoom call and doing all these virtual tours and vetting that out before we get them to outside of region. That is, this is like a great way. It's a resource we'll use forever now that we've invented it.
Sure.
Because it's going to be something that we could utilize moving forward. So again, you get COVID's hurt us in some ways, but I think there's a lot of inventions we've come out of it.
Yeah, I would echo that with Sean. I think it's probably one of the best things that's come out of this from a recruiting perspective is just thinking of how you do your job differently. And this has given us a way to do it differently, but that we can carry over once the dead period is lifted. We can use all these resources in a real important way.
Awesome. Well, that's great. Obviously, like I said, I think it's important that like you said, we have those now, and it's something that COVID sort of pushed us to do. So, that's great. Last question here, and we have about 2 minutes. If you have any additional questions you want to throw in the chat for any of our coaches, please do so. But I'll open this up to the general group. Justin asked, when you attend a game and see a kid that blows up and gets upset by not doing well, do you see that more as passion-based reaction or a troubled kid that shouldn't be recruited? Examples: baseball, pitcher gives up a home run, basketball player misses a free throw and reacts. I'll sort of open that up to all 4 of you. Do you see that as, hey, this kid's passionate, or hey, this kid can't control his emotions?
It's both, and it's always a little bit of a yellow flag. And as an example, I coached at Lehigh Valley United, and I had a U15 team 3 years ago, and I had a kid on the team who was really, really good player, but what I would describe as a palms up kid, like, what the heck, and everything and anything went wrong. He was blaming others, blaming himself, but it was very demonstrative and very distracting. And so he and I had many conversations over the 2 years that was a maturity thing. He was 15, 16 years old and had never been told. And so it took about 2 years to get him to a place where he matured and understood it and understood that body language was really a negative thing for everybody, including coaches. And I ended up recruiting him, and he committed to us because he grew out of it. And so I caught him at the right time. But if it gets to a point where a kid is 17, 18 and is continuing to do that, it's always a yellow flag for me personally.
Awesome. Anybody else want to piggyback on that?
Josh, I'd just say that it takes a little time for coaches. I would ask the high school coach if I can get a little background, because sometimes they haven't had the ability to learn that from home.
Sure.
And so Mike and I can think of a guy or two on our 2015 team that might have reacted differently on the field in the same game. And as soon as I got a little bit more knowledge, the conversation was simply, hey, if you're at Lehigh, this is what would happen. You'd be on the bench. And it's part of our teaching and growth model is we want to make a difference. We want to have the ability to help kids grow. I would share this. There's a limit, and also there's probably a limit on how many you might recruit per class. Like that, you have to work a little bit more to polish up because there's just so many hours in the day. But it's never an absolute one way or the other. But it certainly gets us thinking about, I'd say it's 70-30. We're probably crossing that kid off 70% of the time. The 30% is when we learn more.
Great. All right. Well, listen, we're at an hour here, and I don't want to zoom everybody out, but this has been awesome for me. I hope everybody that's joined the call really enjoyed it. I wanted to thank all the coaches for taking the time to jump on here and give us some really cool insight. I also wanted to thank everybody that I'm involved with in terms of ERAC events, for helping put this on, because I think it was a really special Knowledge at Noon. And I think that, hopefully everybody got some more information, out of this in terms of if you have somebody that is a recruitable age or coming up. So again, thanks for everybody for taking their hour of their day today, coaches, everybody, and stay safe and go Lehigh.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Have a good day.
Nice job, Josh.
Josh, thank you. Great
You're a
job.
much better moderator than I saw last night. So
Maybe that's in my future then, right?